Thank you very much for this informative introduction. I never knew that my favorite biscuits, in fact, have something to do with this place. I knew there were great librarians throughout the history, but making connection with that was interesting. Also, I found out that I share another thing with Leibniz, is the birthday. So we were born on the same day, except a few centuries later. Let's go back to the presentation. When we are faced with a new thing, with a new title or a new topic, new article, a new presentation, new discussion, there are at least 3 questions that come to our mind. The first question is, of course, what is this all about? This one here, I will be talking about digitization, I'll be talking about digitalization, and will bring us back to wherever we are today, which is digital transformation with a special overview of the impact on grey literature and grey literature professionals. The second question which comes to our mind is, so what? We always like to know, in fact, what is the relationship to us? How do we relate to that? So what is the importance to that? When we are talking about this, I'd like to, in fact, put just a few things that might resonate the right way. Why is this important to all of us? First of all, around 46% of all jobs will be probably in the next 15 to 20 years radically transformed. And this is according to the OECD employment outlook from this year. So if you look around, every second one of us or every second job that we are doing will be transformed, will be different. If you're looking at the financial aspect of all this, we can see that probably, this is a guesstimate, of course, over 2 trillion US dollars, in fact, will be invested, will be spent on different technologies which are related to digital transformation. And that's according to International Data Corporation. The one which is really probably concerning most of us is that 85% of the jobs by 2030 don't exist today. That is really something to think about. Many of us are part of the universities, part of some training and so on, and we are training people for the jobs which don't even exist. We don't even know what they will be doing. There is also 20, because we are all concerned about the environment and greening of the environment and so on. So they say that 20% reduction in global carbon emissions by the year 2030 will probably come from the impact of digital transformation. And finally, by 2020, the average person, and this is really mind-boggling when we look at this one, which is probably next year, or let's say even if it's in a few years, that the average person will have more conversations with bots than with their own spouse. So if you can see there, there are different aspects that digital transformation impacts, from the financial to the personal to the professional and so on. So that is the reason when I ask that second question, so what? And of course, the third question is probably the most important. Once we get through the shock, we say, okay, fine, and what now? So I will try to find the right button. Okay, and offer some suggestions to that through the presentation today. I'll be talking slightly on digital transformation as a concept. So it will be, I'll go through the terminology itself, and for non-English speakers, it could be a tongue twister, in fact, because we are talking about digitization, digitalization, digital transformation. So, but those are completely different concepts. They are different historically, and they're conceptually also very different. And then I'll go to the actual impact on the grey literature, specifically through those different phases like scaling, automation, digital business, and so on, and the impact on workplace, and workforce. There'll be a few conclusions also offered. Let's see just briefly about the concept, the digital transformation. What is that all about? There are different definitions about it, and people don't agree usually on definitions, and as soon as someone comes up with a definition, there's always a counter definition trying to find out why is something not really that way. But this is a general one, that a large-scale change of the fundamental business components using modern IT, and also, which I find very, very important, it's the cultural change that challenges the status quo of whatever we are doing. The main targets of the digital transformation are usually business models, their products, people, processes, productivity, services, and if we put it all together, in fact, it's that can impact various parts of the business environment, the environment that we are working might not be not-for-profit, and so on. So it's the operational model, the supply chains, the infrastructure, product sales, approach customers, market, and so on. Some of us that have been here for a little longer, they can say, well, that's nothing new. We had previously something called rule-based business process re-engineering. Yes, we had it. We still have it. It's still being done on, I would call it, on an everyday basis. The main difference here is that, with the digital transformation, we are looking at, in fact, redefining the business using the available IT technology which we can access today. So that is the main difference between those two approaches. And when we are talking about those technologies, they are, I would say, very well known to all of us. We are starting, of course, with artificial intelligence, which some people are attacking, some people are defending. The truth is probably somewhere there that, if properly used, it can be very beneficial for whatever we are doing for the community as such. We are talking about robotics, which is being implemented almost in all manufacturing industries and so on. Internet of Things, the big data, the analytics, the mobile and cloud computing, social network, 3D printing, and all these others, augmented realities, virtual realities, and very hot topics, political topics nowadays, the 5G. This process can also be looked through historical phases, and that is that it started with digitization, it went to digitalization, and currently it is the digital transformation. So it is not something that just happened, there is a historical development of that. So if you are talking about this first phase, which is digitization, this is the process of conversion from analog to digital format. And please keep in mind that quite often, even in professional literature, people are making no distinction between digitization and digitalization. Here we are talking the period probably from early 1990s, the introduction of very powerful, or at least that time it was considered very powerful scanners, 600 dpi, and we were able to, and very excited about transferring lots of paper into analog formats. Analog formats like papers and so on into digital, so that we could use them for our computers, we could do some processing and so on. That was the time, if you remember, when the CD-ROM became like a big hit. Everything was being stored there. We were talking about a long-term preservation of CD-ROMs, like even 50 years we can store it. What happens with the pyramids 3,000 years ago and so on. But yes, this was that huge enthusiasm about the new technology which appeared at that time. I heard that we had some documentaries, films made, and so on. And of course, that was also one of the targets at that time, to let's make them digitally available so that the world can see them. We don't have to go to some special places and so on. As you can see, there was a huge enthusiasm about that. And of course, there were new formats coming out. Some of you might even remember there was something called Deja Vu. People from Canada should know that. There was a TIFF, which was amazingly powerful, and of course, slowly crawling in was a PDF, which at very, very beginning was not really regarded as the best format, but nowadays became a standard. What were the benefits of that phase? The benefits were that the speed of access dramatically improved. It was transferable, and it was giving a possibility for further processing. So that was the phase of digitization. If we are looking for the digitization which came as an automation of business processes, this is the automation of various business or operations, in fact, based on a powerful IT software and hardware. So what we were talking about, at the first phase, we were looking at doing small little things, and then with the advance of more powerful computers and local area networks and communication and so on, people start realizing that those are standalone systems. So let's kind of put them together. Let's build on this possibility that we can attack more than just one specific area. And the enthusiasm at that time was really great because most of us remember that there were huge investments made in IT. IT departments became the most powerful, probably, parts of any organization. There was lots of purchasing, developing, deployment. New applications were being developed and implemented. But still, the problem was that they were dealing with, in a way, single tasks using unrelated technology that hardly talked to each other. So yes, you had amazing HR system, but there was an HR system which did not talk to, for example, the financial system or the resource management or the libraries and so on. So it's only in the next phase, which is coming in digital transformation, that we are trying to put all this system under one umbrella and have the enterprise-wide system which will control and manage all that. This phase also can be regarded as a staged one, because we had that initial phase where single operational processes are being automated, the mid phase where the related processes are automated and joined together, and the third phase, which was the most complex phase, but still part of this particular era, where the multiple systems that support business process and information flows have been integrated. What were the benefits? Although siloed information, distinct, different, and sometimes redundant applications were in fact very common. Digitalization helped lower the production cost, optimize business results, and created new revenue options and new customer experience. So in other words, it was just a step before to what we have today as a digital transformation or the creation of the completely digital economy. The main thing here is that things are being done differently. We are creating a new business model by using modern IT. We are leveraging existing knowledge and profoundly changing the essence of the organization. We are changing its culture, we are changing its management strategy, technological mix, and of course the operational setup. Pursuing new revenue streams, products, and services is, in fact, one of the driving forces there. Everyone who's talking or writing today about digital transformation always put customers first. So yes, it is being regarded as a customer-centric approach, placing the customer in the center of all decisions and all actions. So that is the reason sometimes when you read literature on this, you'll say that resistance to that comes from, well, but we are doing well. We have our profits, our income, our revenue is high, our customers are happy, and so on. And yes, there is the case up to a moment when someone else with a disruptive way comes and changes all that. Regarding the technologies for this particular phase, we are talking about mainly the mobile applications. We are talking the maximum use of artificial intelligence. We are putting everything on the cloud. We are heavily depending on the analytics. Just before this conference started today, I had an interesting discussion about the power of analytics and changing the world. We are designing applications. because it's, and the example given there was that it is not anymore enough, to find we can buy just software, whatever the application is, bring it to the agency or the enterprise and let's run it, right? Well, that's nice, but we have to see, is it really what the users need? Is it something that they're really using, which is a very, very important and big distinction. I'll give an example from my current organization, where we changed the software for the search engine. I was putting about 90% of all financial and other resources into developing so-called advanced search features. Of course, that's nice to have, everything is great, but the problem with that is that less than 4% of users were using that. So, there has to be a proportion, and there has to be some kind of business logic there too. The benefits, of course, are great. That's customer satisfaction, increased profitability, process streamlining, and of course, the new business opportunities. When we are looking at the impact, in fact, on the gray literature, we can also go through these historical phases. We can see that, okay, fine, there was something when we were doing the digitization with the scanning, we went through automation, and different impacts on the gray literature professionals that we had. We can also look at from the actual work environment, so we can talk about workforce, and the workplace too. So if we are to go back again and see with the specific things from digitization and gray literature, I already mentioned the main characteristic of the background. Those years, in fact, were regarded as probably as golden years of gray literature. There was increased funding into that. There was an interest. There was research, larger conferences, and so on. There is also the period when the word, probably already forgotten, was used. At that time, it's for formal documentation. That was regarded as a routine, trivial, duplicated, which existed somewhere else, of little value, administrative, financial, legal, cultural, or historical importance at all. So that was the word, and that was the concept, in fact, which was slowly abandoned at that time, and the gray literature as a more comprehensive and much more important concept and word was introduced, where it was regarded as important, valuable, word collecting, processing, and sharing. So yes, that was a time where everyone, probably from especially academia and government, was giving high importance to this type of information. Some of the issues that gray literature professionals were facing at the time were, in fact, the quality. It was the long-term preservation, the management standards, which were missing. There were the qualified professionals, because everyone could overnight become a qualified GL professional. And of course, there was related to that was the proper training opportunities, which were in fact missing. When we go to the next phase and the impact on the gray literature, I already talked the background, so this is the period which, in fact, the first phase of enthusiasm brings lots of new things, new changes. And so at this phase, I would say we went overboard. So we came up with a multitude of types. So some of the literature shows there that today there are 150 or 200 different types of gray literature, which is nice, which could be even true, but it loses the focus. Because if we start mentioning that everything is gray literature, then probably we can also say nothing is gray literature. So this is one of the main issues that this phase brought. This omnipresence in all processes, operations, and activities. For example, in governments, there were reports. In businesses, there were emails. In academic, there were theses. And all that was put into the same basket of gray literature. Unfortunately, there were no specific GL applications at that time. The GL management systems were part of larger systems. Most of the time, it was document management or library information systems. There were lack of standards, and definitely not enough best practices. I'm not saying there were not some best practices, but there are probably not enough, and they were not properly widespread and known. I'm going back again to this lack of training opportunities, which is still present. And of course, we have based on that, we have the weak professional associations, because if you look at some other professions, you can see that their associations are very strong. They issue different certifications and so on. Something like that still doesn't exist with the gray literature world. Finally, we come to this phase of today and the digital transformation impact on the gray literature. We talked about this being customer-centric, and we talked about organizational and cultural change. When we look today, where the gray literature as activity, also as a profession stands, we can say that we have a great opportunity, in fact, to reposition the GL. And this is the opportunity which will not last for long, because there are lots of different professions. And I just mentioned, for example, data managers who are already taking over probably the world of information management in general and positioning themselves as the main players in this new environment. Another requirement is that the GL must become part of the business strategy. It is not enough to say, well, this is important. This should be used. This should be saved. You have to position yourself inside the business strategy and show that there is a value in this, whatever is being collected and shared around. We also need to adopt and promote new modern approaches, including agile. We need to go into much more cooperation, and of course the topic, the open science and open access. One thing which is missing, and that's a great opportunity for the GL, in fact, is to promote long-term preservation, because many of those systems nowadays, even the most powerful ones, in fact, are talking about, well, let's save it. And the saving equals doing backups. Backups, that's not a long-term preservation. So that could be the role that GL profession as such can offer and can do. If you're looking at the impact of digital transformation on the GL workforce and workplace, we have to look at those as different entities. So when we are looking at the work, we can of course go to the famous division of what. So it's the nature of GL work, which is variety, volume, velocity, and value. Those are the 4 or 5 different V's known as in information management literature. All of them are changing. And I don't have to convince you about, for example, of the importance of the reliability of information that is being collected and the fake news and all these things which are going around us and the role that GL might play there. And the question of role, or especially the role of the leaders or the leadership, where we do need to have forward thinking. We need some visionary people there, and we need, of course, to go back to the square one, which is what are the needs of our customers. The who, which is the workforce, and how is the work organization. So if you look at the workforce, probably the biggest changes will be there, or are already happening there. It is the increased requirements for the digital literacy in all aspects. So just coming here and on the plane, I was reading an interesting article about the impact of AI, and should the computer be part of our workflow, or are we going to be a part of computer's workflow? So this is a very, very interesting question, and it's only by increasing our own importance and our own digital literacy and the power of using those computers, we can do it the proper way. And I believe the proper way is that those are still tools that we should use for a specific purpose. The workforce itself needs another change, which is lifelong learning, and this is something that goes back with some of those changes that I said that some of the professions don't even exist nowadays. It is not enough just to say, okay, fine, I get my PhD, or I got my whatever the university degrees and so on 10 years, 15 years ago. We do need to have constant possibility of improving the knowledge. We do have to get more engaged, which we are not. We still believe in the sense of here it is important, so people should understand it is important. People don't do that. You know, we have to repeatedly show and prove the importance of our work and the information and documentation that we do store and take care of. We have to become much more mobile, which means in many ways the change of the workforce, but also the workplace too, because many people nowadays are probably keeping more than one position, one workplace. They're working different hours, shifts, and so on, even sometimes different professions. And this is the fact of life nowadays, the reality. And we should probably work more on accepting that instead of fighting it. The generation gap is something that we are all aware of. Quite often when you go to, especially to governmental organization, the average age is not on the best side because people tend to come there and stay until the retirement. So yes, you do have this, I would call it digitally born generation that don't even know anything else but documents which are only available electronically and so on. They look at you when you bring them something for a signature because why do you need that and so on. There are electronic signatures and so on. So there is this generation gap which is also very important to tackle. Everyone is also talking about ethics, digital ethics, and this is a very important and very open subject. It's probably a topic for the whole new presentation. How do we do that nowadays, and what is ethical, what is not? The workplace itself, it's populated by new IT tools, which require this digital dexterity. And there are very nice articles and definitions of what is the digital dexterity meant nowadays. We need to go into this digital culture where everything is born digital, kept digital, and probably retired as digital. We do need to remove info silos, and I was listening carefully to this previous presentation about cooperative knowledge creation. This is one of those ways because we still have people who think that they are working on the most important thing in the world and no one else should even know about it. And that is the culture which does need to be changed. And of course, we do need to have those flexible fluid teams using maybe Agile or some of those newer technology and what I already mentioned, the remote work. In conclusion, we always make assumptions about life. And assumptions are okay. But the problem with assumption is that if you don't take action on them, they still remain just assumptions of no direct impact on our lives. So one of the assumptions is the change. The change is inevitable. It will be happening. It is happening. And probably it will always be a new change, new things coming and so on. So how do we tackle that? The only probably way to tackle that is by constant learning. Constantly changing our mindset, trying to cope with these new things and, in fact, come up with a strategy that, can counterpart this immense change as well as the speed. With the speed, we are talking about getting different skills which are transferable. So yes, we can have a set of skills, but they do need to be transferable from one function of one job to another one. The complexity, like the previous case when they were creating a book, you need 10 people to work on the team, in fact, to come up with something which is valuable. And nowadays, any area that we are working on, Dominic was mentioning, let's rewrite a book on GL and so on. It's a teamwork. It probably will need 10, 15 people just to get involved and to come up with some good product such as that. And of course, disruption. There will be new technologies, there will be new methodologies, there will be new solutions. The only way to tackle that is, in fact, transformation. Finally, it should not be forgotten that the technology is not a silver bullet. The legacy systems are very costly, and the human factors is the major factor. Thank you very much.